The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Hey, thank you, Madam Speaker. So on the Budget Implementation Act, I really have three things I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about the process and the committee process that took us to what may be the last day that we debate this bill. I want to talk about some of the things that Conservatives agree with that are contained in the BIA, and I want to talk about those with which we disagree. And so I want to begin by being clear and being on the parliamentary record that what happened with the debate on the BIA, in many respects, is a credit, if I may say, to the parliamentary process by which parties agree to a work plan within committee, have a robust work plan that calls for officials and ministers to appear. We didn't have time to really call very many experts outside of the public service itself. But when that bill was referred to committee, this committee got to work. It got to work collaboratively. And the reason I bring this up is because it has been falsely and repeatedly said in this chamber that this bill was held up by the opposition. It was not. There is only one party that has filibustered or delayed business at the Finance Committee. It is actually the Liberal Party, who did so on Bill C-4 on 3 different occasions. They filibustered their own bill. So while I'm being heckled by the member for Winnipeg North, I invite him to check the record, maybe check with his parliamentary secretary. So this committee, not his parliamentary secretary. I'm just being heckled left, right, and center, Madam Speaker. I don't know what is with these Liberals today, but I'll maybe leave it at that on the process and talk about things that Conservatives agree with in this BIA. This BIA contains policy reversals from the government that we support, like repealing the digital services tax, something that we fought in the last Parliament tooth and nail, foretold all of the consequences of that bill, and now here we are in the next Parliament, the Liberals admitting through their legislation that Conservatives were right all along and are repealing the digital services tax. They're also repealing the luxury tax on corporate aircraft and some watercraft. We said at the time that these taxes would simply harm industry and would raise insignificant amounts of revenue, in fact would likely result in lost economic activity. So they've come around to us on that. They've come around on the underutilized housing tax, which we raised concerns about when they brought it in, and they are repealing this. So these are all positive steps with which we agree. There are many things that we do not agree with in this BIA, and I'm going to talk about a few of them as time will allow. So this BIA contains creates a Crown Corporation to at least explore the construction of a high-speed rail network. Now, we're not opposed to infrastructure, if you want to call this train such, perhaps. But what they are actually doing here is proposing and beginning to spend significant amounts of money on a train with dubious projections for its ridership and absolutely terrifying possibilities for total cost. And so we oppose this. The CEO of this new corp testified at committee. He was candid, and he certainly gave nothing to assure Canadians that this would not ultimately become an extraordinary boondoggle. He would not even acknowledge, didn't seem to act like surprised when we talked about the existing subsidy to keep the existing rail network going, which relies on a subsidy of $2 for every dollar that it takes in fares. Boy, I'm going to run out of time with all the things wrong with this budget, but Madam Speaker, we move on to Veterans Affairs. And this BIA contains an absolutely disgraceful provision wherein the Government of Canada, to correct an ongoing, they call it a mistake, but what it really is the Department of Veterans Affairs over a series of governments has systemically denied proper levels of compensation to veterans on the basis of a 1998 law. They are being sued successfully. It appears that the government would be ordered to repay $870 billion to veterans, many of whom are in long-term care. These are elderly veterans that have, in some cases, given blood and limbs for their country. And so to deal with the prospect of being ordered to pay nearly $1 billion in compensation, they are retroactively changing a 1998 law to avoid and give legal cover to refuse compensation to veterans. It's shameful. We've heard a lot about the ministerial powers, including in the last interventions in the previous speech, so I'm going to go past that one, but fortunately, these were amended. So this is what happened at committee. We agreed to a 605-clause bill that we went through clause by clause in only 6 hours, Madam Speaker. Amendments were proposed. Some amendments were accepted by the government, which is appreciated. The partially dialing back the draconian powers that they've given themselves would be one point. But in the ministerial appearances we have, I have to take some time and unpack what happened when we had the Minister of Finance. So this Budget Implementation Act implements a budget with a $78.3 billion deficit. So, Madam Speaker, the members of the governing party caucus campaigned in an election promising not to exceed their deficit. The last deficit that was tabled in the previous budget was $42 billion. There was a promise not to exceed that deficit. So they immediately take, they form government, a continuation of the old government. They have $20 billion in new deficit spending added in a projection. They then promise that they won't exceed that deficit projection, and they table a deficit with $78 billion. So I don't understand how all of these members, especially the ones that have been here since 2015, who have campaigned in election after election, promising that it's going to get better, that they're going to rein in spending. They promised in 2015 to balance the budget by 2017. They've broken every promise, blown through every fiscal guardrail, cut loose every fiscal anchor, and now want to be taken at their word, maybe, I guess, that $78 billion is the new number they won't exceed. The debt to GDP ratio isn't even declining. It's going up, Madam Speaker. That used to be the sacred line that they shall not cross, in the words of one of the previous finance ministers. So when this finance minister came to committee and was asked repeatedly about balanced budgets, he actually said to me, Madam Speaker, that it was irresponsible for members of the opposition to ask the finance minister when they would balance the budget. He refused to answer the question for, I don't know, 5 solid minutes of refusal to answer a basic financial question. He could have said, to the committee, that we currently don't have a projection that goes out far enough to find a balanced budget. We're not there. What you see in the budget is as good as it gets. The officials have nothing further to say on the future of deficits. But he didn't. He actually challenged the legitimacy of the question. So how arrogant do you have to be when you're a government suggesting to an opposition that they shouldn't ask basic questions about the health of the finances and the future of the finances of this country? They've talked in their speeches today, I know I only have maybe 30 seconds left, about construction of major projects. Well, they promised to build these at speeds unimaginable. We're a year in now. There are no approvals, no even real talk. They won't even say the word pipeline out loud, Madam Speaker. And so, again, confronted with these questions about on which date construction might begin or on which date we can expect an approval, there was none. So the accountability has been disappointing, and that's why we oppose this Budget Implementation Act.
Questions and comments, the Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, here's a fundamental flaw to the member's argument when he talks about deficit. Surely to goodness he would recognize that of the G7 countries, countries like the United States, France, England, there's only 2 countries that actually have a AAA rating, Canada being one of them. We, as a government, and the Prime Minister is using our financial capacity in order to build a stronger, healthier infrastructure here in Canada. And then you hear the Conservatives waffle, well, you know, we don't think about this, we're not too sure about that. And we saw that yesterday. For example, does the Conservative Party support a high-speed train for Canada? I think the Conservative Party needs to be straightforward with Canadians and say yes or no. And I'll leave it at that, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
It's always fun watching the Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader trying to keep the opposition to account. This intervention says everything about these guys. First of all, he is ignoring all of the promises that he has run in 4 elections on. He is now taking credit for a AAA credit rating that his government inherited from the previous government and which is under threat by at least one agency, which is talking about review. So his government deserves no credit for that. And it would be one thing if they didn't promise something different, Madam Speaker. They didn't promise to expand the deficit forever because of their fiscal capacity. That's not what they ran on. They ran on not increasing the deficit, and they've broken the promise.
Les commentaires, l'honorable député de Mirabel.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hello to my colleague, with whom I work very well on the Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, in C-15, in the budget, the government spends $11.5 billion on Build Canada homes, and these amounts will not have parliamentary oversight. So we have no idea how those programs are going to be run or administered. Most of all, we don't have any guarantee that there will be any equity or fairness in how these amounts are granted to provinces. So how does my colleague feel about Build Canada homes? Does he agree that there should be a guaranteed percentage set aside for social housing and community housing in Quebec?
Well, Madam Speaker, his question takes us right into everything wrong with this government's approach to nearly any public policy problem out there. They build bureaucracies. That's what they build. And they set up fiscal structures and financial structures that, at best, are oblique, or at worst, just send money into black holes. So, yes, I fundamentally disagree with the approach of this government, and I am extraordinarily skeptical of their ability to achieve any of the things that they say their bureaucratic structures are set up to do.
For Courtney Alberni.
Speaker, the Bureau of Pension Advocates is about to lose half of their workforce, Madam Speaker. This is this Liberal government is sunsetting a program that's meant to address wait times for Canada's RCMP and military veterans. Madam Speaker, this is important for veterans that are appealing their benefits that have been denied. In fact, they've had an 89% success rate of cases that have been heard in improving benefits. And Greg Harlow, the president of the Association of Justice Council, the union representing the lawyers employed by the federal government, he cited that veterans are going to get hurt by this. Madam Speaker, we put forward a motion, the NDP, which was defeated by this Liberal government just yesterday, Madam Speaker, to reverse these cuts. Can my colleague speak about the duty and the honour we have to support Canada's RCMP and military veterans?
Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Yes, my colleague, the member for Airdrie Cochrane, commented on this in debate yesterday. For those watching who don't know, this structure that they are cutting is one that was created to help veterans cope with the sheer complexity of the systems that seem almost designed in cases to deny benefit. So that's where these, that's where the fiscal discipline, if that's what they want to call it, what it looks like with this government. Trying to stick to a record, a promise-breaking deficit by, clawing back or refusing to repay $870 million to veterans and to cut the people that protect veterans who are struggling to get benefits that they're entitled to.